I think we've been programmed quite a bit with our relationship with money. And we have a relationship with everything known in our environment. You have a relationship, a neurological network in your brain for your parents, for your cell phone, for your computer, where you live, where you've lived in the past, what you're going to do tomorrow. That, for the most part, the brain is a reflection of everything that we know, right? So along with that is our relationship with money. Let's back up and just look at how people form beliefs. Most beliefs are created from past experiences, right? So children, when they're in their early ages, their brainwaves are very slow. Like their brainwaves are alpha when they're like 7 to 12. They're in theta when they're like 2 to 6 years old, and they're in delta like when they're newborn to 2 years old. And so these brainwave states are states that were really suggestible to information.
So when we hear information, we believe it.
And we accept it, we believe it, we surrender to it as if it's the truth without analyzing it, because there's no analytical facilities yet.
Right.
The analytical mind starts around 12 or so, 7 to 12, and that analytical mind is actually what creates a barrier between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So that's really, really important, because if you heard money is the root of all evil, money is bad, only certain people are allowed to make money, you have to work hard to make money, this is how you got to do it, and that becomes the foundation subconsciously. Let's recording an audio file. You just keep recording that audio file, it becomes a subconscious program, right? So a lot of people have a relationship with money based on either what they've been told or what they've experienced in their outer environment, right? So we gain information from our environment, and the stronger the emotion we feel from experiences in our lives, the more altered we feel inside of us, the more the brain freezes a frame and takes a picture. And that snapshot is called the memory. So based on emotion, the emotion alters our internal state. So you're going along as Lewis, feeling really good, and all of a sudden you have this trauma, you have this crisis, you have this shock, and all of a sudden you have this dramatic change in your internal state, and your senses get heightened, and then you freeze the frame and you associate this internal state with whatever it is that's causing it, right? Think about people who have relationships with money, right, from the past. All beliefs are based on past experiences. So you have an experience where you lose money, you have an experience where money's taken away from you, you have an experience where you don't have enough, you're living in a place where there's not enough money, or a family that's not enough money. Then the emotion that most people are living by on a moment-to-moment basis is lack. Like, I'm in lack of having something that I want. Okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because the experience changes your emotional state. You freeze the frame, you take a picture. The problem is, that's hardware. So we think neurologically within the circuits of that past experience, and we feel chemically within the boundaries of that emotion, which would say, for example, be lack, right? Body is saying, I'm waiting for some external event to occur. I win the lottery, I marry the right guy, whatever it is, that you're waiting for that event to occur. That experience produces an emotion. So the emotion then takes away the lack. And so when we play the game in three-dimensional reality, the creation game in three-dimensional reality, we experience separation from everyone or everything, because our senses fool us into the illusion, the hallucination of separation. I'm here and you're there. I'm here and the door is over there. So I'm aware that I'm here at one point of consciousness, and the door is over there, another point of consciousness. Okay, so in order for me to get from here to the door, I got to move my body and do something through space. I got to do something, and everything in this three-dimensional reality is going to take time and energy, right? So, okay, so then here's Lewis right here, and then he says, okay, I want this experience in my future, and your brain automatically predicts and projects how far in the future you think it's going to take. One point of consciousness, I'm here. The other point of consciousness is where I'm placing my dream. So I'm separate from that experience. So then how do I get to that experience? In three-dimensional reality, you got to get up and you got to do something. You got to go to work, you got to drive to work, it takes energy, you got to fill your car with gas, you got to eat food, you got to work, all this stuff. You got to sleep, you got to recover if there's stress. And now people are, in a sense, waiting for the experience that's 10 years down the road or 30 years down the road to happen, to take away the lack of them not having it. And unfortunately, many times when the experience finally occurs, they can't enjoy it because they're too exhausted. When we create from three-dimensional reality, we're creating from lack and separation. In other words, you're driving down the road and you see someone driving a car that all of a sudden you realize that you don't have. The moment you become aware that that person has that car and you don't have it, you're in lack of having it, right? So what the brain naturally does is it naturally creates you driving that car. And you have an image of yourself driving that car and you start identifying, wow, that would be a greater experience for me to have. The problem is the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of actually happening for most people is the concept called time, right? Between cause and effect, right? So some people develop the ability to manage themselves and manage their life. They develop certain skills and they can pay for it and they can get it very quickly. The problem is when the novelty of that experience wears off, the car, and they're no longer identifying with that, and the feeling of emptiness and lack comes back,
they need to find something else.
They got to go to find something else. And so there's this game that goes on where you never have enough, right? And that's the lack game, right? So then if you think about people having the things they want in their life, when they create from lack and separation, it's the experience in three-dimensional reality that produces the emotion, and the emotion is saying, let's feel and experience this thing that you've been in lack and separation from, and that emotion then takes away the lack or separation. But you've worked really hard to get it, okay? Nothing wrong with that. Is there another way to do it? The person who's living in lack is waiting for their wealth to feel abundant. They're waiting for their success to feel empowered. They're waiting for their healing to feel gratitude. They're waiting for their new relationship to feel love. They're waiting for their mystical experience to feel awe. That's the Newtonian model of reality, of cause and effect. Waiting for that event to happen to take away this separation or lack. Nothing wrong with it. It's the way most people create. But what we've discovered is actually something else. The moment you feel gratitude, your healing begins. The moment you feel worthy and abundant, you're generating wealth. The moment you're empowered, you are moving towards your success. The moment you're in love with yourself and you're in love with life, you'll create an equal. The moment you are in awe of life, you're going to have a mystical experience. And so that's causing an effect, right? So then if you can teach people then how to create, instead of from lack or separation, but create from wholeness, and create from what we call the quantum field instead of three-dimensional reality. The way first of all, it takes knowledge, okay? The quantum field is an invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't hear it, you can't feel it. It exists beyond our experience of three-dimensional reality. So how much of your waking day do you put your attention on matter, on the material world, and how much of your waking day are you aware of energy and frequency? For most people, they're unaware of the quantum field, and if you're unaware of it, it doesn't exist for you. Right. Just like you have a nose, but if you're unaware of it, it doesn't exist for you. The moment you become aware of it, it exists. Well, the quantum field, you can study all kinds of science, and they'll tell you there is this invisible field of frequency and energy that exists beyond the senses that tend to connect everything physical and material. In fact, everything physical and material is connected to this field. Okay, so how do you get there? When you take all of your attention off your body, and you are not paying attention to your emotions, your drives, your habits. If you could take all of your attention off of every element in your environment, and you're not thinking about time, you're not thinking about your schedule, where you need to be, or what happened yesterday, you can relax into the present moment. There tends to be a dramatic change in the way the brain functions when people do this properly. We call it getting beyond yourself. Because if you're thinking about anything in your three-dimensional reality, that's where your attention is and that's where your energy is. Okay, so we kind of figured out this formula when people really become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time. They're pretty much all of a sudden outside the constraints of the Newtonian world of got to do something to get an outcome. And if you can teach people how to linger there without a name, without a face, without a profession, without a family, without a culture, without a past, without a disease. You teach them how to be in this place we call the unknown, right? And you teach them that from that place, that invisible field, is where everything material comes from. And if they could create coherence in their brain, you need a strong signal in the brain. The more coherent the brain, the more stronger the signal. When you put your attention on space and you divert your attention, the act of sensing without thinking actually starts to slow the brainwaves down. Not only slow it down, but all of a sudden cause the brain to start reintegrating, starts to synchronize, right? And so you see different compartments of the brain that were firing out of order start to resonate. They start to communicate. They're all of a sudden synchronizing, and what syncs in the brain kind of links in the brain. So when a person has their whole entire brain firing in rhythm, that's a very strong signal that you can send out into the field. So then the clear intention tends to be a very important element that we have to get down. And the more coherent the brain, the more clear the signal for that intention. So with intention and attention, we could actually make thought more real than anything else. The signal sent out isn't enough. You have to draw the experience back to you. So if you're creating from the field instead of from matter, right? There's a very strong possibility that you'll shorten the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it. And when there's a vibrational match between your energy and that future that you want to experience, now if you're creating from the field, you actually don't go anywhere to get it. You actually draw it to you. So here comes the synchronicities, the serendipities, the coincidences, the opportunities, and they come out of nowhere. And you say, I don't understand. I didn't do anything. Well, you changed your energy. And so then the other element is a coherent heart, right? And the heart has a magnetic signature. And the magnetic signature is what draws reality to us, right? So you combine that clear intention with a coherent brain. Now here's the key. This takes practice.
Yes.
Because the person who's living in lack is usually unworthy, is usually insecure, is usually in their past, they're usually frustrated, they're usually impatient, they're usually resentful, because nothing's changing out there because it's taking too long. Everything takes a lot of time when you do matter to matter, right? But now let's do something that would be really cool. Let's write down the feelings of how you would feel if that future happened, and you're going to have to feel that feeling before it occurs. So now, okay, what does an abundant person feel? Pretty much free, in love with life, grateful to be alive, abundant. Okay, now let's practice feeling those. Turns out when you're feeling those other emotions like resentment and impatience and frustration, you're stepping on the gas pedal, you're turning on the sympathetic nervous system, and you're stepping on the brake. At the same time, which is you're angry, you're frustrated, but the fight or flight nervous system says run, fight, or hide, and you're sitting in a Zoom meeting and your neck is pulsating is because the heart is beating against the closed system, right? You're not using it in an adaptive way. Let's learn the formula of how to create, right?
Yes.
So then you'd have to feel those emotions before the experience occurred. And if you understood that you could dissociate all of your attention from this three-dimensional reality and have no attention on anything known, and understand that it's the field that creates matter, not matter that emits the field. And if you could get to that place, the next thing that happens, the heart informs the brain, it's safe to create now. What's the next dream? What's the next opportunity you want to experience? That's a state of creation. So now you have a Wi-Fi signal. You got a coherent brain, that's a directive, that's a signal out, and you got this coherent heart, that's what draws it to us, right? You combine those two, and if there's a vibrational match between your energy and that potential in the quantum field, and you're feeling abundant, and whatever your brain associates with being abundant, that's your call. That's what the creative process is. This is the creative center. The brain frontal lobe actually says, what would it be like to be creative or abundant? I don't know what it'd be like to be abundant. Well, then go read a few books on people who actually became abundant and realized it wasn't a glorious process. They failed miserably. They got betrayed. They learned a lot of lessons, but they persevered. And what are the qualities of that person that you could embody? That's the key, right? Because it's not about wealth. It's who you become.